Hello and welcome back to the Shades of Orange. Today I want to talk about some of my favorite horror novellas. I've said before, but I think that short fiction works really well when it comes to horror. So I want to talk about some of my personal favorites. I'm going to call these books novellas, although technically one or two of them might be novelettes or short novels, but I'm just going to use it as a catch-all for everything that roughly falls between that 100 to 150 page range. Let's get started. First, I want to talk about Sour Candy by Kealan Burke. And this story follows a man who has decided on purpose to be childless. And his belief is reinforced when he goes to the store and witnesses a young boy having a meltdown in the candy aisle with his haggard looking mother just watching over and not doing anything. Through a series of circumstances, this boy ends up following this man home, and from there, everyone else in the world seems to believe that this boy is actually the man's son. This book has some great psychological aspects to it because you're not entirely sure if the man is crazy or if it's everyone else who's crazy. And this book also has a really creepy child. This boy is dressed in old-timey clothes and is just not acting like a little boy should. I love stories with creepy kids, and this one definitely fit that bill. I've said before, and I'll say it again, that I will never be able to eat sour candy without thinking about this book. It was just very creepy, very unsettling, and just fantastically written. I thought it was clever, and I highly recommend it. I think everyone should check it out. Next, I want to recommend Mara by Denney, which follows a young teenage girl who is a dancer and competing for the lead role in an upcoming ballet when she starts to hear voices that are telling her to do terrible things. This is another story that deals with elements of the psychological because you are trying to decide whether or not she is possessed or simply crazy. And I really like the fact that the main character is a very dark and troubled girl with a lot of self-loathing and depressive thoughts. I really like these types of characters, and I thought it was done very well. She is very destructive in her personality and is involved in a lot of unhealthy behavior. She is involved with one of her teachers, and you just see her downward spiral. I think this is a great book for people to read who come from a background of reading suspense or thrillers because it has those elements, and I just loved it. Certainly this book is not going to be for everyone because not everyone likes to read such dark thoughts, and this book could be very triggering for the wrong person in the wrong place in their life. But if you're like me and love stories about women who are not perfect, who have a troubled past and are just dealing with the ugliness of their minds, this is an excellent one to pick up. I really do recommend it. I can't say too much about the plot because it's novella. You don't want to give away too much, but this one is another winner for sure. Next, I want to recommend Aetherchrist by Kirk, which follows a small town that gets analog broadcasts on their TVs that prophesize the deaths of their citizens. One day, a man, a traveling salesman, comes to this town and sees himself on these TVs, and through a series of screens, see what he is going to do over the next coming hours and days, and basically becomes a race to stop this impending future from actually happening. This book is a great blend of horror with elements of sci-fi. It's very weird. It delves into government conspiracies and just has lots of those paranoid aspects surrounding it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's very weird. It's got some creepy aspects. And particularly what I love about it so much is that it blends together old technology with the new, because it is set in the present day roughly, but it of course is still dealing with old analog television, and I just found it really creepy, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone looking for a kooky, unique story. It was a lot of fun. Next, I want to recommend The Grownup by Gillian Flynn, which is the story of a woman who works as a fortune teller reading palms. She also works a side job of doing hand jobs in the back room. One day, a woman comes to her office and asks her to go and check out her house because she believes it to be haunted. She doesn't really believe in this kind of stuff, but is a paying gig, so she agrees to go. And from there, things start to get weird. This is a really good blend of horror and thriller, so I think it's a really good crossover for people trying to get into the horror genre. And it's a great story again because you're trying to decide whether or not anything is actually happening in this house. And I don't want to say too much about this plot because it's Gillian Flynn. She always has some good twists and turns in her stories. I would love to see her do more short fiction like this because I think she has a real talent for this length of story, and I personally love this one. Highly recommend it. If you haven't checked it out, it's definitely worth doing so. And I just love it because it's Gillian Flynn. And finally, I want to recommend Snapshot by Joe Hill. This follows a geeky teenage boy back in the 1980s that comes across his elderly neighbor who he knows suffers from dementia. He goes to help her out and she warns him to beware of the man with the camera. Soon enough, he comes across a man with a Polaroid camera, and through some possible supernatural circumstances, he believes that this camera has some powers and possibly the ability to steal memories. Like the other novella I mentioned, I really enjoy stories that involve older technology, and I appreciate the fact that this was dealing with a Polaroid camera and not a modern digital camera. I want to mention that while it is a horror story, it's also a very emotional story and definitely has a lot of themes of family and loss. And it's not just about the camera, but is really about so much more. If you are going to read it, I actually recommend listening to the audiobook, which is found in the collection Strange Weather. And this particular story is narrated by Will Wheaton, and because the main character is a very geeky young boy, I think Will Wheaton's personality just works really well for the story and really enhanced the reading experience. So I definitely recommend that one as well. So that's it. Those are 5 of my favorite horror novellas. I'd love to know if you have a favorite. Recommend it down below, or let me know if you're planning on picking up any of the books that I mentioned here today. Otherwise, hope you're having a good one, and I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.